Hello everybody, Mike here, coming at you from my room of the Ancient Mariner, and tonight I'm going to do a video that I probably should do an Iron Maiden themed video since I call this the room of the Ancient Mariner. So tonight I thought I'd crack open and enjoy a nice Trooper beer. And while I'm enjoying that, we're going to run down all the Iron Maiden albums, and I'm going to show each one, and I'm going to pick my favorite song from each record, and maybe a deep track. No more than three. I mean, you could pick every song Iron Maiden does as your favorite song almost. So I got this idea from JC's Rock and Metal Reviews. He did a video like this, so I thought, since I got so much Iron Maiden stuff around here, do an Iron Maiden video. So here we go. Cheers. Okay, so for this video I'm going to show my CDs. I've been building my Iron Maiden vinyl collection. I mean, I've got most of the older albums. I stopped getting vinyl after Somewhere in Time, but I've had all the CDs. For this video, I'm just gonna use my CDs for ease. And there's one when we get to Virtual 11. I just don't have, but we'll talk about it when we get to it. Okay, so let's start with the debut album, Iron Maiden, and very important album in metal history. It's really raw, punky, but it would really be a good blueprint for what was going to come. And one of the most important metal albums in the history of metal. And I think if I had to pick a favorite song from it, Prowler's really good. I like Prowler. Charlotte the Harlot, I think, is maybe a deeper track that I really like. Everybody usually picks the Iron Maiden, which is, it's a great song in concert. But I'm going to go with Charlotte the Harlot as my favorite from the debut album. And then next we move on to the excellent Killers album. Now admittedly, this is not an album that I really appreciated as much as I should have back in the day when I was a kid, first listening to Iron Maiden. I didn't really fall in love with Maiden until The Number of the Beast. So I don't know if it was the change in vocals from Paul Di'Anno to Bruce. I'll be honest, I didn't really get into Paul's vocals a whole lot. But now, when I listen now, he delivered some really great performances on these first two records. And Killers is just a phenomenal album. Picking a favorite song on here is tough. But my favorite song from the album has always been Murders in the Rue Morgue. But I got to go with a couple of deep tracks that I think are fantastic. Prodigal Son is amazing. And then Purgatory, I think, could be, it's just so fast and tight. And I think that it could definitely be considered as a proto-thrash metal song. Every time I hear Purgatory, I really hear the influence that Iron Maiden had on Metallica, in Metallica's music. So those are my picks from Killers. Next we move on to The Number of the Beast. This was the album that I got as a kid that I just absolutely love this album. Some fans are critical of this album and think that it's overrated. I really don't think it's overrated. I don't think there's filler material on this album. The songs are great. Even songs such as Invaders and Gangland, everybody craps all over Gangland. I don't know why. I think Gangland's a decent tune, but my favorite song from this album has always been the title track, The Number of the Beast. But you'd have to also look at Hallowed Be Thy Name as one of the greatest Maiden songs ever. I'm gonna go as my deep track, or my deep cut is gonna be from the remastered version, Total Eclipse. A great song, and I'm not sure why it was really ever left off of the at least the American pressing, but a good song that doesn't get recognized as often as it should. So there's Number of the Beast. Next up, Peace of Mind. Musical direction we get a little different here, maybe a little more, not proggish, but a little more technicality involved, I think, in Peace of Mind. Obviously, The Trooper is one of the greatest metal songs ever written. So that's probably my ultimate favorite from the album, but I really, really love Die With Your Boots On. I think that's a great tune. Side 2, kind of, some of the complaints about this album by the critics, so that side 2 kind of, I don't know, fizzles out a little bit, but I don't think so. I think there may be only one. I'll just say Quest for Fire is probably one of my least favorite songs from the classic lineup. I can't get into that. I don't know why. But I do like Sun and Steel. That's going to be my deep cut. So yeah, Die With Your Boots On. Obviously The Trooper, and yeah, those are my favorites from Peace of Mind. All right. Refreshing. Overpriced, but hey, I love it. Okay, next, Power Slave. Boy, the band was at the top of their game here. I'll just say, without getting too much into this album, I think Power Slave is one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. I think that it stands up against any classic metal album from any of the metal powerhouses. I'll put this up against Master of Puppets, Rain and Blood. I'll put it up against anything. You just had the prototype again for pure speed, powerful metal. This is a 10 out of 10 album. My favorite track, my favorite Maiden song overall is 2 Minutes to Midnight. So that's going to be my pick as my favorite. But obviously, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner has to be on there, since that's what I named the room after. My deep track is one recently I've seen some videos with people crap on this tune. I don't know why. Maybe they didn't really open their ears when they listened to it, but I love Back in the Village. I just think it's a great song, that's my pick for the best deep cut off this fantastic, monumental 10 out of 10 Iron Maiden classic, Power Slave. All right, next on to, if you can hear it in the background, I just moved some things around in my music room, so I've got a upgraded turntable system in here now, and I'm spinning this one right now. So this is Somewhere in Time, a heavy album, a fantastic continuation of the power and intensity that was brought with Power Slave. So yeah, this stretch of albums is just phenomenal. It's hard for me to pick a favorite off this album, because to me, this is just one, everything is, there's not one song on here that really knocks my socks off in their catalog, but everything on this album is just fantastic. I really like, I think Stranger in a Strange Land has probably always been my go-to song off this. I like Sea of Madness too. Those are little deeper cuts, but my deep cut from this album is Deja Vu, a very underrated Dave Murray song, and it's just fantastic. So those are my picks from Somewhere in Time. And next up, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Another great album that you listen to it and it's pretty much from start to finish. The Clairvoyant is, I think, a great song, and then The Evil That Men Do is just a fantastic song. It's just really awesome experience to hear that played live. So those are my two picks from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Next up, another album that gets this No Prayer for the Dying. This album gets totally shit on by a lot of the Iron Maiden fan base, and I absolutely don't understand why. It's how do you follow up maybe one of your most popular albums in your discography, and one of your most, I mean, maybe technically proficient and even experimental. You know, what do you do after that? Well, you come out with this, which is just a ripper. I mean, they trimmed the fat. They kind of, I think, feel like they wanted to get back to a just straight out fun, rollicking metal album, which is kind of what was going on around them. And you know, I just think this is a fantastic record. Tail Gunner's one of my favorite Maiden songs. It's really reminds me of The Clairvoyant, just that kind of riff and that vibe. But just great songs up and down on this album. You know, I think Hooks in You is one of my favorites. You know, that was co-written by Adrian Smith, and I always thought Adrian's songs had more of a traditional metal feel. You know, Steve's songs always have that driving bass-driven kind of thing going on, and you can, you know, really recognize you know, a galloping, driving, Harris-pinned song. But the stuff that the material that Adrian Smith helped write, fantastic. So I really liked that, Hooks in You. And then the Bruce Dickinson track, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. I mean, yeah, it's kind of commercial, maybe kind of a tongue-in-cheeky, goofy title. Just a great song. So I really think this is an underappreciated, underrated album by Maiden. I've always loved it, still love it. And those are my picks from No Prayer That Died. All right. Next up, another album that was kind of polarizing. A lot of people put Fear of the Dark toward the bottom of the discography, and I don't understand that why either. Maybe I just have a thing for 90s Maiden. But I always love this album. I love the artwork. I love the vibe. To me, this album just has a feel. It has no other way to describe it other than it just has a feel to it. You know, this was Maiden in '92 when thrash was had peaked and was kind of on the phase of fizzling out because of the grunge movement, and metal was suffering the same fate. And then Iron Maiden delivered this, and I thought this was a great record. I've always liked From Here to Eternity. I've always loved that song. That's probably my favorite from this album. But obviously the title track, Fear of the Dark, is fantastic, Maiden classic. But I got two deep cuts that I want to go to and point out. One being Judas Be My Guide. That's just a great driving metal tune. And Chains of Misery. I like Chains of Misery. It's got a little more of a bluesy kind of feel to it, and it's not your traditional galloping Maiden affair, but it's heavy and catchy, and I like it. So that's Fear of the Dark. Okay, so next up, you know, here the next couple of albums, obviously the Blaze Bayley albums, they left the Maiden fan base somewhat divided. Again, I don't think Iron Maiden puts out a bad album. This was different, obviously different. The production on this is a little, I think, flimsy maybe in comparison to some of the other. I don't think Martin Birch produced this, but anyway, there's, you know, an all-around difference in the sound. But you know, it's still Iron Maiden, especially songs like Sign of the Cross. Fantastic, my favorite song off this album. But you know, I think again, it just sounds so much better live when Bruce sings it. And I like Man on the Ledge. Those are probably the two that I would pick from Virtual 10. Is that okay? And like I said, I don't own or not Virtual X Factor, Virtual 11. I'm sorry, I don't own Virtual 11, but my favorite song is probably The Klansman. And I'm gonna be one of the, I don't know, in that small percentage that doesn't hate on The Angel and the Gambler. I actually really like the song. I think it's different. I think if, you know, it's terribly repetitive, and I get it, but it really is a catchy chorus, and little overdone, but I like some of the nuances of the song that are really different from Iron Maiden. Like, you know, some of the almost sounds like a Hammond organ, you know, chords in there. But, you know, I like it. Repetitive, but I like it. Okay, moving on to 21st Century Iron Maiden. This is Brave New World. And, you know, a great record. Again, it's 21st Century Maiden doesn't wow me like, you know, like the stuff from the 80s and 90s. I've grown to appreciate this record more. It didn't blow me away when it came out, but you know, I loved it because it was Iron Maiden. So favorite song on it is probably going to be, I really like the Nomad. I think that's a great song. And Ghost of the Navigator. Ghost of the Navigator. And Dream of Mirrors. I like Dream of Mirrors. So, but Nomad would be my deep cut on that. I don't know if they've ever played it. But those are my picks from Brave New World. Then we have Dance of Death, which may be the worst cover of all. It is I mean, that's just, somebody should be fired for thinking that was a good idea. But, Passchendaele is probably my favorite song from this. I like lead off Wildest Dreams. I think that's a good tune. Yeah, I mean, those are the two that really jump out for me. This one doesn't stay with me like some of the other records. But every time I put it on and listen to it, I'm like, wow, yeah, I really like this. Well, why do I not like this more than I do? I guess it's just how Dance of Death is with me. But those are my picks for Dance of Death. We move to A Matter of Life and Death. Boy, this one was a source of some controversy too. I'm going to say I love this record. When it came out, again, I was a little, it took some warming up because it is different. And it's not a headbanging affair by any stretch of the means, but some really, I think, very good, thoughtful songs on this album. And, you know, every time I play it, I really like it. I appreciate it for what it is, as instead of being disappointed in what it is not, if that makes any sense. So I really like The Pilgrim, but For the Greater Good of God is probably my favorite on the album. But I think the last three tracks are all great. For the Greater Good of God, Lord of Light, and The Legacy. Those are my picks for A Matter of Life and Death. And then we have The Final Frontier. There's the back of it there. You know, I think they brought the heavy back a little bit more in this album, but there's still, I think this is the most progressive of the Maiden albums. And, you know, I didn't really mind that. I like to see a little bit of diversity in the musical direction from time to time. And there were a couple times, you know, when you listen to this, that I actually forget it's Iron Maiden because it sounds like it could be Rush, you know, and you know, I love Rush, so I don't think that's a terrible thing. Always liked El Dorado. Thought that was a really, you know, a good example of what Maiden does. And Isle of Avalon is my favorite off this album. I think that's a fantastic song. It's got some really great guitar work in it from Adrian Smith is just phenomenal on that. And that's the kind of proggy, technical song on the album. Like it a lot. And the Talisman. Talisman's a really good cut. And that brings us to The Book of Souls, most recently. A really good album. It's a lot to take in. It's a long, lengthy listen. You got to be dedicated. And I think kind of like with Dance of Death, every time I listen to it, I appreciate that it's a really good record. But you know, a lot of the songs just don't stay with me. I mean, some of these I might recognize them when I hear them, but I can't tell you that I know how they go like a lot of the other classics. So that being said, I've always liked Speed of Light. I think that's a good tune. But my favorite on this album is The Red and the Black. That's just an absolutely amazing Steve Harris song. With vocal performance from Bruce is off the wall on that too. And the musicality is top notch. I just think it's, you know, it's not a super heavy song, but it's glorious to listen to. It's a fantastic song. A lot of people will say Empire of the Clouds is really, you know, it is epic. It's a good song. I get a little bored with it, to be honest. You know, it's certainly no Rime of the Ancient Mariner. But you know, hey, it's good. My biggest beef with 21st Century Maiden is I think the biggest thing holding them back is Kevin Shirley, to be honest. I just think his production style is so drastically different than what Martin Birch brought to the table. And sadly, with Martin Birch's passing, I believe last year, you know, there will be no reunion between Maiden and Martin Birch, and I think that's really unfortunate because I think Martin Birch really brought out an intensity and heaviness in the band that Kevin Shirley just hasn't done. So anyway, that's the Maiden discography, all the studio albums. Those are my favorite songs from those albums. I'll probably do a ranking video one of these days where I rank, you know, all these albums from, you know, top to bottom, which is tough to do because I love every Iron Maiden album. I don't think there is a bad album. You know, there are ones that I go to more often than I go to the others, but there's no bad Iron Maiden albums. So anyway, that's going to be all for tonight, or for this video at least. So up the irons, and remember, let them know your metal, bang your head, throw the goat, and I'll see you next time.